everybody. Happy Friday to you. It is Friday, June 7th, 2024. I hope you are all doing well today and are as excited about this episode as I am. I want to welcome you back to an all new episode of The Breakthrough Show. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas, and today we have an extraordinary guest. I'm so excited, and I can already tell from our conversation before the show that we're not going to have any problems filling the airwaves today. We're going to have lots to talk about. He is a Dutch-Argentinian photographer whose work captures the intricate stories of urban life. We are excited to have him here with us today, especially since we were actually introduced kind of by accident in the comments of other videos from another favorite guest on the Breakthrough Show Network, Scott Mason. His journey from tax law to photography is truly inspiring, and his latest work, Tokyo, is a testament to his incredible storytelling through the lens. So without further ado, I'd love you all to put your virtual hands together and welcome Richard Koek to the show. Let's get him on here. Richard, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
I love it. Well, I'm so glad that we got a chance to talk before the show about how we met, because I think sometimes we kind of meet people in passing, if you will, on the internet, and we're like, don't really remember where they're from, but I do remember in the comments, you and I would go back and forth with Scott and Oleg on their squirrel show, which I always enjoyed. It was a moment I'll remember.
Yeah. Yeah, I do find those common things, those comment sections when there is like a live show going on.
Yeah,
it's always very intriguing because there's not really real communication going on. It's like snippets and then like quick reactions.
Yeah,
it doesn't really feel like real connecting, to be honest. It's kind of like often like I want to be heard kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it can seem like that for sure. And I think the really interesting thing about what we've done here on the Breakthrough Show Network is so many of us will watch each other's shows, and so we're getting to know each other and we're creating those relationships. And it does take an element, I feel like, of commitment to want to get to know people further outside just those, hey, pay attention to me sort of comments.
Yeah.
So I'd love for you to tell everybody where you're joining us from today and maybe what that word breakthrough means to you, if anything.
Right. I'm now here sitting in my desk area, neatly shielded off, so you won't see so it looks all neat on screen. So I'm here in New York City. I'm on in Harlem on 125th Street area on the west side near Columbia University. That's where I'm located. That's where we live. And just one correction: I am Argentinian Dutch when it comes to my ethnicity. Let me say it like that. But I am a Dutch American when it comes to my passports. Yeah, I'm one passports. Yeah.
It sounds like you've traveled a lot anyway, and so we've talked often on this show about how we as humans become a sort of mosaic of the places, people, and experiences that we've witnessed, and taken in our lives. So we both could be melting pots of all of the places we've taken in. Yeah.
True. Yeah. Breakthrough. I find it a very difficult question. Because like when you talk about breakthrough, it's, often you think about like momentous moments in your life where you made a big shift and started to see something from a different point of view that changed your whole track of life. I had a few of those moments.
Right.
But also breakthroughs can also be very small. I mean, like you can have breakthroughs by your thinking changing on a certain subject, or like whether it's a political view or like any other view that you have that's changed by somebody else's opinion or by somebody else's experience. I mean, that's a breakthrough too. So it's small and big. That's kind of like what it is. Yeah.
Right. Have you ever thought about if you feel as if you can create maybe a space where you welcome in more breakthroughs? Do you think it's possible to make your own breakthroughs, or do they just happen?
Interesting question. I think you definitely have to have an open mind. You have to be open for acceptance of other people's point of view. I wish that more people in this time of age would be more acceptance of other people's. I think, having empathy for other people's opinions and where they come from. I do think it's very important to create other breakthroughs, because we're always works in progress. I'm not done yet with my development.
Yeah.
And so, so I think, you have to let the other in within yourself in order to to grow. Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. I know we're going to talk a little bit about your story and how you got into photography, but you were in law before becoming a photographer. Would you say that transition was somewhat of a breakthrough for you?
That's definitely a breakthrough. That's absolutely a breakthrough. Yeah. It's the breakthrough of accepting that what you're doing, you're not good at it. I was not a good lawyer. I have to be honest about it. And B, it's not fulfilling me in a way that photography now does fulfill me. And so, but that was a long road to it's not like from one day to another. It actually started with, of course, my interest in the arts and in seeing how other people visualize things, whether it's painting or photographs. My mother lived, so this is a little story. My mother lived in Amsterdam when she still lived. She lived in Amsterdam, and there was she was offered a rental, a rent stabilized house, and there was a backyard, and the backyard had a shed, and so she moved in, and so we cleaned out the shed, me and my brother. And then we found out that there was an old lady living in this house, and the husband of that lady, that was kind of like his man cave. So everything was there, from porn magazines to there was this box with all the stuff that was dated from World War II. It was really interesting. And so we opened that box, and so we found out maps, and it turned out that he used to be in the Einsatz. That's what it was called. So you had, of course, the Germans who invaded the Netherlands. We're talking about the Netherlands right now. So the Germans invaded the Netherlands, but besides the fact that they took, the Jewish population to exterminate, they also actually used working force. So people were forced to go into forced labor in Germany, working in the industry, the war industry. And so he was one of the people who had been forced to go to Germany and work in the war industry. And so there were food stamps. There was the road back to the Netherlands from Germany. And so we were looking at this whole past of a human being unfolding in front of us on the table. And so we were we have to give this back to this lady. She actually moved to a nursing home. And so my brother went with my mom to this lady. And she was like, I don't need that stuff from that a-hole. And she was totally, they were she didn't want to have to deal with anything of him. Yeah. And she was throw it away. That's what she said. And that was one of my breakthrough moments. I realized this is so awful. This is somebody's life that if we would have thrown it away, he would completely disappear and nobody would that was it. And so we actually donated the stuff to one of the organizations who preserved the history of of the war and stuff. But that was one of the breakthrough moments that I realized I need to do something else than what I'm doing right now to have some lasting effect. And I still didn't figure out what that lasting effect, but what I was doing at that moment did not have that feeling of I'm doing. I was only doing work to make big corporations more profitable than they were, and so save taxes by finding loopholes and creating constructions. And I was I need to change something, and that was one of the breakthrough moments. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to ask you this because as I was thinking about you talking about how if you throw away these photos, right, everything sort of disappears. We are in such a different time now where pretty much everybody has a cell phone with a camera. And, and then we have social media where we're always uploading things and everything else. And so everything I feel like is so much more visible now. Like I joke around with my friends, like, oh, we're so glad that we didn't have this when we were back in school days because we have so many things that we just wanted to be private. But do you think I'm trying to figure out the way to say this. Do you think there's maybe an over willingness to share now? Is there like an unbalance that sort of happened? How do you feel about that with photos? Because it's just so different now compared to what it used to be, even just 20 years ago.
Right. Yeah. I think it's one of the blessings, I think, of social media.
Mm-hmm.
It's that, like, of course, I think we're all human beings who want to be heard, who want to who want to be like appreciated or loved, and social media can help you, of course, with that urge, that primal urge that you can have. And I do like one of the big advantages of social media is that you can have a lasting. We just spoke about it in our talk before this show. Like it's a nice way of creating a timeline of your life through visuals, so that other people can see whether you like it or not. But at least the moment you post it, other people can see your life, and so that in some way you matter. You feel like like maybe kind of like what I felt when I realized that I have somebody's private life here on the table. Like, we matter, and we can still last after we are gone, even with our presence on the World Wide Web. It's kind of the nice, interesting philosophical things that that happens with this whole social media thing.
Yeah, I that's a beautiful way to look at it. I think everybody does have that innate desire to matter, to want to be seen and heard. And through social media, we're able to do that. And then I think that it becomes a challenge sometimes when we become dependent on the likes and the loves and the shares and the comments. And then when we don't get that, we're back to feeling like, are we being heard? Are we being seen?
It's tricky stuff. Yeah,
it is. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back in just a moment, and we're going to dive into Richard's story and, of course, the brand new book, Tokyo. So we'll be right back after this.
Breakthroughs are about more than you might think. They're about discovering who you are, digging deep, reaching to the core of your soul. They're about healing yourself, understanding your beliefs, creating a ripple effect. And it's not just those initial moments that matter. It's about using them to bring more joy into our own lives and the lives of others. It's about having fun, letting loose, enjoying every moment life has to offer. It's about finding a safe space. It's about creating connection. Join us each and every day for exclusive programming, special events, and a community to call home, where we invite you to explore, change the way you look at and live your life, and go beyond the breakthrough. So we ask you, are you ready? We'll see you online at thebreakthroughshow.com.
Welcome back to the Breakthrough Show. Today is Friday, June 7th, 2024. We talked about, having a timeline on social media. I love the timeline that we've ended up here on the Breakthrough Show network as well, of starting to say the dates on things so we can look back and go, oh, I remember that. I remember that. So excited to have Richard here with us today, photographer. And I mean, really, you're a storyteller. You're truly, as I was sharing on Project Joy this morning. I get to be Vanna White today. I have my copies of New York, New York, as well as Tokyo here today. I even picked out a couple of my favorites out of the new book. But I was sharing with Richard before the show that as I'm flipping through, I really enjoy looking at the photos and kind of trying to guess what's happening there, or try to, I create these own stories in my head. Who knows if they're even close to accurate? But do you ever do that through the lens, Richard? Do you ever look through the lens and kind of imagine what you think is going on, and then it turns out to be something completely different?
No, not at all. No, no. When I'm taking pictures, I'm kind of like in a completely different zone, and my zone is pure visual, actually. So it's I'm trying to find the right picture. So I'm only working visually and trying to find the aesthetics that I desire or that I deem beautiful or right I'm, in all honesty, totally not thinking of what the story is behind any person. It's interesting, when I had the launch of my book Tokyo last week, we also talked about being a fly on the wall and how that made me feel. And I was like, I'd be absolutely perfectly happy if I could be a fly on the wall and didn't have to communicate with anybody, believe it or not, in order to get the picture that I would like to have. And so I do get a lot of stories. Of course, I have to interact with people in order to go inside some or connect with somebody. Right. But I'm kind of a loner, and I'm perfectly happy in my little bubble. Yeah.
I love it. Well, and I love that we each have that different perspective about it as well. You're looking for something specific, and like I said before, I'm so fascinated by people and why right. Of things. I was the one, the annoying child going why all the time. So I still do that now. Nothing has changed. Right. So I want to.
That's what you do. What you're doing now, because
it's exactly what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
It is. Just with pretty graphics and things now, so only difference. But I want to backtrack for a minute. And so I know that you mentioned, that the being a tax lawyer was not really fulfilling for you. And so how did you you're completely out of that world now, right? Like, how did you ultimately completely make that? Like, do you remember the final day that you practiced law?
Good question. Well, I remember the final that I practiced. Actually, I don't know, because because I worked for a big law firm, and then I changed profession. So I was still a lawyer, but then I worked for like a big, not a temp agency, but an agency who basically tries to connect a workforce, like a higher educated workforce, with companies, and so like a headhunter kind of thing. And but still as a lawyer, because I dealt with the lawyers basically, and so and my clients were like law departments and stuff like that. So and at a certain sorry, what was your question?
Do you remember? Do you remember what that transition was?
Like? So it's not from one day to another. It's not like suddenly it's like, okay, now I'm going to be a photographer. Now it's a slow transition from being unhappy or not fulfilling, not being fulfilled, but still, even if I didn't know that it was not fulfilling, I still in search for something that would give me a better feeling about myself and the work and the situation I was in. So it's a slow transition from big corporate to a smaller corporate to I started working into I just tried trial and error, falling, and then no, this is not it. And so I slowly started to like, after that, what I just mentioned, that story of the shed in my mom's backyard, I started to like look into like, I want to do a course on, so I started to do a course on painting. And then I realized, man, it takes 3 weeks for oil paint to dry. I can't wait for this. This is like too much. Like, so I noticed that painting doesn't really fit my personality whatsoever. I'm just patient for that. And then photography, I already always liked photography. I was always the one who, if I had a camera as a teenager, I would bring pictures home, and people were like, who is that in the picture? And I'm like, I don't know. And they were like, why do you take pictures of strangers? Like, that was like kind of the first thing in photography that I realized, okay, I'm dealing with this differently. I had no idea why. And then so I'm trying to figure out what can I do creatively. And then photography turned out to be the best thing that fitted my personality. And then I had to go, it's a small transition. It's not like from one day to another. It's like, okay, I'm going to be creative. I had like a mortgage back then. And so I had a lot of savings because I had a good job. Well, trust me, I blew all that savings when I made that big jump into
I'm sure.
the new world. But I'm now finally in another, now I'm the photographer, and I'm in the right place, and I know what I want to photograph now, which is also a journey to figure out what kind of photography. And so no, it's not from one day to another. It's a slow transition, and that's kind of how it went.
Yeah. I want to acknowledge really quickly, Miss Teresa's out there joining us. Good to see you today, Teresa. Thank you so much for being here. And let us know if you have any questions for Richard as we're sharing parts of his story today. I was going to ask you if you kind of gave it away a little bit. You used to take pictures of people. And by the way, that makes me feel so much better because I tend to do that. And my kids are like, Mom, that's so weird.
Right.
They don't like it.
That's like pointing at somebody. Yeah, that's rude.
Yes.
Right.
But other than that, did you know? Did you have an idea of what Richard the photographer would look like, or have you kind of just figured that out as you've gone along?
Look like in what
like
kind?
Look like what your photography would look like what kind of vibe you would go for in the photos you would take, or did you have an idea, I want to do a book, or I want to just do portraits, or
Well, I think it starts with like looking at people that you admire. So I think you start to look for inspiration. There's things that I loved, and so one of the my biggest inspiration, I have like his Bible book. I have it here. This is my biggest inspiration, and that's like August Sander. And he's a German pre-World War II photographer who basically photographed people as if it was in their microcosmos. He made portraits of people, but he basically took portraits of like everybody. First his friends. And then he started to wander around. So he was kind of like an anthropologist.
Yeah.
And so I have my photographers who I really admired. I saw like the real prints at the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. And I was like, this is amazing. So that's how you start to fill yourself up with like, I want to do this. And there are other photographers that I admired. And then it took a while to find my own visual signature, let me say it like that, like my own style. So that's kind of like how I developed into. I had no idea where I was going, and I still don't know where I'm going when it comes to my work, because I really don't like. I do analyze my work. But I analyze after I take the picture, because if I start analyzing that's what you're saying just now, like with the socializing, the same as with analyzing.
Yeah.
I'm in a certain mode. I don't want to think about my motivations. I just go with my gut feeling. I'm kind of like feel that I'm floating around on something else besides myself. That's kind of like how it feels.
Yeah.
That's why like a lot of creative people feel it like some God moment is happening, that you're like feel that I'm doing the right thing, but I don't know why. That kind of thing.
Right.
That's the best state to be in for me to take a beautiful picture. Just go with beauty and with what feels the right thing, and without analyzing. And the analyzing comes later when people ask me why, and when people ask me, hey, I see this, I see that, and that comes later. Yeah.
Mm. Do you just analyze, or do you ever pick apart? Are you your own worst critic at all?
Yeah, of course I'm my own worst critic. Yes, absolutely. That's a whole other, but that's a personal thing. That's like a
Right.
whole other. I think a lot of photographers have this feeling of like the imposter syndrome. It's called that.
Mm.
People who are very talented, and I know from people who are very, very successful, still like have this insecurity with them that one day they're gonna like find out that it was all a hoax, that it's all like, I still
Yeah.
have that feeling deep inside, like, a curator once told me that I expressed my insecurity about these things, and she said it's because it comes so natural to you. So
Mm.
when it comes very natural, it kind of like feels easy, because it's like, because I don't analyze, I just do. It feels kind of easy, and
Right.
and that makes you feel like, but wait a minute, why is it so easy? It's just, and that's why I still feel like I'm just taking pictures of the street, guys. It's not that such a big deal. And then always have this little voice that's saying like, one day they're going to find out that it is not such a big deal. There are
Mm.
like, pictures on the street,
Yeah.
which they are. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so many people can relate to that though, Richard. And even what you were talking about before, it was so affirming that you were sharing about not even really realizing what you were doing, kind of being taken to another place while you work. Because even I can relate to that with a lot of the shows that I do. I'll do the show and I'm just so enamored by the conversation and the guest and what's going on. I have no idea afterwards what just happened.
Right.
And so for me, that tells me that that's what I'm supposed to be doing, because I'm just so passionate about it that it consumes me completely in the moment. And so that's a really beautiful thing that that's what you experience. And I know many other people. We have a lot of creatives that watch this show, but whether it's through art or music or storytelling or something like that, and they can relate to that feeling of just being completely swept away.
Right. And
I love
also when it comes to like, another problem is of course valuing your work. So besides
Mm.
like, making your work and how it makes you feel, and if you and it being appreciated by others, then it's also it's my business. So then it's
Mm.
like, okay, in the beginning you just want to like have your pictures out there in a magazine.
Right.
Wow, my pictures in a magazine. But at a certain point it's like, okay, this is my profession, I need to pay the rent, especially if you live in New York. You need to pay the rent, and it's a big chunk of your income.
Yeah.
And so then it comes to like, okay, what is the worth of my work in money wise, and how am I pricing myself? And then it all collapses of it all like crushes into like the feeling of like, but I do want to be appreciated as well. And well, and then with this whole imposter thing going in, it's like, but it is actually worth not much that much, so it's like, what? And so it's a whole process of like how to deal with that. And now I'm finally at a place that I do think, yes, my talent, because I also, besides my artwork and all the books, I still also do assignments where somebody asks me to do something, and then I have to, listen to the briefing, and I know what what the client wants and stuff like that. And so so there comes no, I lost my train of thought right now, but that's kind of like but that's kind of like also a complicated thing, this whole like the pricing of yourself. And
Right.
yeah,
It's tough. It's tough to balance that
yeah,
imposter syndrome, but I just want to do what I love, but I also want to feel valued. There's so many layers to,
absolutely.
not just being a creative, but then selling what you do.
Right.
It's challenging. It's challenging.
It's challenging,
When
but
did
at a certain point you like really oh yeah, that's what my train of thought was ending. Was like, at a certain point I'm now at a place that I value myself.
Mm.
It's a total, it actually, your work is just, it exposes what you have deep inside of yourself, I do think.
Mm.
And so it's more about, okay, now I'm at a place that I value myself as a human being. And so I do think what I do it takes my time, and it's worth to ask something for the time that I give you, and so there is a balance that you suddenly find that yes, I am worthy. It's a completely different realm than just photography. You know, I'm worthy, and that has a price. You know, so yeah. So that's kind of like where I am right now, which is a very nice place to be in, because now I dare to say no. Now I dare to say, I'm sorry, but I can find you somebody who's maybe cheaper, who like, you know, who, or I'm saying, no, I cannot do that at this short time. So basically I'm now powerful enough for myself to create boundaries in any situation. And, and so it's kind of like a whole concept of how I now, you know, live, basically. Yeah.
Right. It's so powerful though, Richard. It's such, I mean, I can't tell you, I can already tell I'm going to get so many private messages about just this part. Listen, we really needed to hear that today. Thank you. So that's great. When did you decide to do the book? Was New York the first book that you did?
Yeah. So New York came to life in 2018. I had so basically I was doing my street photography, because it's a book with street photography. That's kind of the label. So I was I had there was a tattoo artist in Soho, New York, who had a beautiful gallery space, and he said, I would like to have your New York, because I was posting it on social media. I would like to have some of your New York stuff in my gallery. So we did a solo show in 2016. And during that solo show, I created one of these like online free, you know, you can do those blurb creations with your pictures. So I made something and I showed it to what happened to be a publisher. And so basically what was in the show, I put in a blurb publication, self-publication. And she said, we got to do something with this. This is beautiful. And then so it took us 1.5 years to finally, she worked for a publishing house in Europe.
Wow.
And so it took us 1.5 years to finally convince the commercial department that another book about New York would be a good choice, because there's so many books about New York. So they were like, why another book, you know? And so, and that's how the book came to be. It's basically little steps towards somebody who says, hey, we should do something and let's do it. So that was 2018, and that book sold out, which is great. And now I think you got the second version, which is smaller, right, than the Tokyo book?
Yes, it is smaller than the Tokyo book.
So, now it's a smaller version, because the biggest complaint was it's such a heavy book. So I was like, let's make a smaller one, so you can take it, because a lot of people buy it who are leaving New York City. So I was like, let's make a lighter version, so you can take it on your airplane, you know, to wherever you live.
Right.
And that version you have came out in 2021.
Oh, okay. So there was a second edition then.
I had to have a second edition. And it's also a little different because COVID happened. So like the whole situation changed when it comes to living in general. So the pictures that you see are 2018. So that's pre-COVID. And so what I realized when people were flipping through my book, I sensed some sense of sadness when people were looking through it, because everybody was like, that's how it used to be, you know? So I felt some melancholy. So I did feel that the preface, the foreword, should reference to COVID and the changes of how we're living now in a city that's been pretty badly hit by COVID, of course. Yeah. Right.
One of my in New York, page 92 and 93. I have to show. I love, so it's a double page. It's hard for me to show here, but I love this image in particular because, living in Connecticut, I've been to New York so many times because we're so close here. But normally you see streets packed full of people. There's like people shoved in everywhere. There's a lot happening. And this is such a peaceful, there's two people on opposite benches reading outside of a bookstore. And it's this peacefulness that you don't often equate to middle of New York City.
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of like close to Washington Square Park. Yeah, it's an interesting picture because one person is on his cell phone and the other person has a book. So it kind of like also shows, the difference in how we gather information.
Yeah.
And yeah, so and everything has a story. So yeah, for UC Peacefulness, I heard later on that the store that is being pictured in that book, that's where they were doing, because like at Washington Square Park, you have these chess tables that people play chess, and then you can like pay and play with somebody, and so you hear all these stories, and one of the stories is like often these chess players are people who have been incarcerated because that's what they do all day, so they become very good at it, and that's kind of how they make a buck. And if there were like large amounts of money involved, they would go inside and play, and that was one of the stores where they would play for like larger amounts of money. All these stories you hear after taking the picture, but that's kind of like that's part of it.
It's fascinating. And there really is, this picture in particular, there is so much to take in. Like if you look for a minute, you do see the book and then the cell phone. And then, there's so much in the windows and so much that's going on the street. And just there's a lot in these photos.
A lot going on. Yeah. In every picture.
Yeah. So that's one of my favorite photos in New York, New York. Now, how did Tokyo come about? It was did you know that that's where you wanted to go next?
Yeah, so that was a completely different setup, to be honest, because New York kind of happened. New York is partly from my archive, and also, I had to photograph certain things to complete the book. Tokyo is totally like, I don't live in Tokyo. That's kind of the biggest difference is I don't live there. So it's kind of easy. I have thousands of pictures from New York, so it's kind of easy to like take the best and create a narrative in a book. Tokyo is like, okay, I'm going to Tokyo. I managed to get my publicist interested in doing a Tokyo book because I visited Tokyo in 2019, pre-pandemic. I visited Tokyo from December and January 2020, when there was a rumor of a virus in China going on, and I took some pictures, sent it to my publisher and said, hey, how about a new book? And they were like, they loved it, what they saw, and they said, let's go for it. And so we made an agreement. However, then COVID happened, and then everything went down the drain from then on. Japan was one of the last countries that opened up. They opened up November 2022. That was like really late. And so I wasn't able to take any pictures while I had this, this contract with and they even already put it on pre-sale on the large websites, I hadn't made any picture yet, and I still had to make the book. And so in 2023, I made that book Tokyo. And so I went to Tokyo twice, which is completely, talk about breakthrough. That was kind of like a breakthrough moment as well, because I had no clue how to do this, because I had no idea how big Tokyo actually really was. I thought New York City was like big enough. Tokyo is like at least twice as big.
Wow.
Way more spread out, because New York is all up in the air. And Tokyo is like pretty flat, and I arrived in Tokyo and I looked at the Google Maps. I'm like, how am I going to do this? This is too much. I'm here only 2 weeks. How am I going to So I had like no clue. I was really like conflicted and frustrated. Like, what did I do? Like, I cannot make a book about Tokyo. So I had to really start walking around. I had to like basically go, okay, Richard, you just go out and take pictures. Just start with that, and we'll see where it ends. And that's kind of like what I did. And then after 2 weeks, I was looking at it. I'm like, I'm missing this and I'm missing that. And then I realized, okay, there is a big difference between, but let's start with what you asked for. That's kind of like how it was a different process. And that's how the book came to be, from Tokyo. It's a completely different way, because I had to go there and I had to stay there for a short amount of time. And I had to make it happen. It had to be successful.
Right. I will tell you on a very personal note, Tokyo does not come across as Richard the tourist visiting Tokyo.
Right.
at
That's
all.
that's a good
And
compliment.
the reason I can speak to this so well is because literally 2 weeks ago, my father, my stepmother, and my brothers all went to Japan.
Right. Nice.
And so I saw all of their photos before I got your book. And while there was some touristy things, my father is very interested in architecture and history and things like that. So his photos are a little more in depth. But you, speaking of what we were talking about before, about having kind of preconceived notions of other cultures and countries and things like that, I fully expected that I was going to get this book and it was going to be Hello Kitty, Ghibli Studios, cats everywhere, Pokemon, all of the things that we know Japan for here.
Yeah.
And so like lots of sushi. I don't know. So
right. Well, there is sushi in there. Yeah.
There is a couple of things, but I heard your interview about this book. There's one cat.
One cat in the book. Yeah. And I was kind of like, I needed to have a cat, but you're told, and thank you for bringing that up, because that's kind of like really one of the motivations of how this book came to be in the end, because I started to share with social media, like, hey, I'm in Tokyo. And so can anybody give me suggestions? And I got this whole like bunch of like strange stores, all the tropes and the stereotypical stuff that people would expect from Japan. The kimono, the cherry blossoms. So I started to walk around and I'm like, there's something else going on here. And also like my expectations of being in Tokyo was completely different than what the mainstream media has, painted for me. And so basically I really thought I would be stepping in the future. That was kind of like my idea. I'm going to Tokyo, I'm going to step in the future. I realized, wait a minute, I noticed that the buildings were kind of like, there's a different quality to things, because Tokyo deal with earthquake danger. So I could tell that buildings were not built to last.
Right.
And I did some research, like the average age of a building in Tokyo is 26 years, which is like basically like it's a completely new city. So there are only like a few very old historical sites, and that's it. The rest is like, and all that has to do with the earthquake danger. It also has to do with how Japanese people look at living in a house that people have lived and died in. So they look completely different about living in an old house. It's not always a positive thing for somebody from that culture. So there's like a whole different motivation. So I realized what I see is different from what your parents came home with, so I really felt I need to do something with this. And that became my real motivation of completing this book. Is like, I would like to show, of course, what you see in the picture behind me, like the sumo wrestlers, other yuku girls that are on the cover. Those are that's the stereotypical, that's the cliche. Let me say more friendlier. That's the cliche. And the cliche is important because it is part of life there. The cliche, especially traditional stuff,
history,
the kimono, the temples. It is very much woven into daily life in Japan and in Tokyo. However, there's also a lot of daily life happening that has nothing to do with all that stuff. And people take their children to school. People eat. People run people try to make the red light. People try to make the green light. People go to work, are cramped in a subway station. So I noticed that there's a lot of living happening in Tokyo that we do as well. And there's no difference between that. And I really thought I wanted a book where both elements are represented. Daily beauty and the beauty of the tradition. Yeah.
I love that. I want to ask you, so I have 4 different pictures picked out of the book that I would love to ask you about.
You didn't share me that beforehand, so now I'm like...
on the spot.
This
is going to be great. Okay, so the first one is page 88, and it's literally...
Oh, yeah.
first thing I'm looking at this and I'm like, what in the world? You can't even see what's going on here. But I remember, so again, we only can go by what we've seen in our own little bubbles.
Right.
And so I remember seeing movies where they're in Japan where they have kind of screens instead of doors.
Right.
And so I said, maybe that's the point here. Talk about this photo, Richard.
Yeah. So this is a storefront. So basically, you're right about the screen doors. I really had to so I just passed by on the street to the storefront, and I really love this because it doesn't give me a clear view what's going on inside. I think it's a store that is closed, and it is this milky glass that diffuses everything. And I thought, oh, how beautiful is this actually? Because you can only now see shapes and colors. You kind of can figure out what's behind it. So I really felt this kind of like blurred my vision, literally.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a very poetic vision of like something that is actually, it's a mess, obviously, but it's a beautiful mess. That's what I thought. The tones are beautiful, like the browns and the reds, very earth tones with the brown facade. So for me, the whole combination was beautiful. But I really had to talk with my graphic designer because he didn't choose this picture. I'm like, I want this picture in there because I'm really happy that you chose this because this is one of my most mysterious photographs of Tokyo that I thought was important. So thanks for choosing that.
Of course. Well, and it's interesting that we talked about what we did at the beginning with social media and how really it gives us just a skimmed view of our lives. And it's sort of like that with doors that way, where you can just sort of see what's in there, but not really. A metaphor for that. Okay. This next one I picked is specifically for my teenage daughter, because it is page 142. And the reason I chose this one is because I needed to know if this was some sort of K-pop band or what are we looking at here?
Right. I love it. Yeah. That's great. Because, okay, so I made 2 trips to Tokyo. The first trip was basically, I was wandering the streets, taking pictures. And then I came home and I was looking at it. I'm like, you know what? You can definitely tell that I am visiting here. You can definitely see that I have a distance towards what I photograph. I don't speak the language, so I cannot make contact easily. It was difficult to get close to other worlds, to get close. I didn't go into people's homes really, so a few. So I really felt I need to make more connections. So what I did with my second trip, I went prior on social media saying I'm going to Tokyo, and then I started to does anybody have any suggestions? Does anybody know anybody? And so I got introduced and then reintroduced. And then I rolled into Yamano Beauty College. And so basically these are students. But what I liked about it, these are all boys. You're right.
Right.
These are all and so I was visiting Yamano. I got invited by the president of Yamano Beauty, Jane Yamano.
Wow.
She said, come to our school. We have there was a special day going on. You see a few of those pictures. Kimono contest was going on. So the beautiful picture of the lady in white with the beautiful hair, that was also in that school. It's basically a school that deals with modern styling, hairstyling, but also the old traditional, how to wear kimono and how to do bridal hair.
Wow. Okay.
So, and these are boys doing, so that's also really interesting. I thought this was just great. They were having lunch. And so this is but this kind of little elements that show, because they were just done with lunch, and see how neatly they wrap it all up. So I really wanted that in the picture, because this is kind of this is the mess they make in Tokyo after they have lunch, perfectly, neatly put it.
So many lessons we could learn over here.
And then the interesting thing is, one of the kids has this really fierce tattoo. He has his neck is tattooed.
Oh wow!
And there is this big conception in by outsiders of Japan that, there's also like a tattoo picture actually in the book.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that picture is beautiful. That picture is stunning. Oh my word.
So there is this conception of like how there is this like tattoo used to be something that is very well connected, very much connected with the Japanese mob, so the Yakuza. So tattoo was something that Yakuza members would wear. But now, like, it's the society is changing, and the young generation now tattoos himself in completely different ways. And so the things are changing. So what I also liked is that this one kid has this tattoo on his neck, as you can see here, which is kind of like really badass. And and it kind of also shows there is a new generation who makes different decisions what to do with their own bodies. And so you can also sense a sense of individual choices that people make in order to like do whatever they think they want to do, which is something that kind of like a nice juxtaposition to what you often see in Tokyo, is that a lot of people are conforming to a certain way of of dressing and being. So I thought this was a great picture that shows a lot of what's happening right now in modern Tokyo.
Yeah. There's so much in that photo. I felt like that is like these kids are just like the kids I see at the school down the street, but then also there's something different. It's a similarity, but a difference at the same time. It's right. Really interesting to look at that photo. So from a parent perspective, I really loved this photo on 196 and 197. And I'll share with you the reason that I loved this. So much. You can see he is literally taking flight as.
I love that. Masa. So this was one of the appointments that I have in somebody's house. And what I also love about it is kind of doesn't show that you're in Tokyo. You could be anywhere in the world with this picture.
Right.
And that's what I love about the concept of my book. It's like, yes, we have the sumo, kimono, and tea ceremony. But people live their daily lives, and they have kids jumping from the couch in Spider-Man outfits. So that's what we do everywhere. That's what kids love to do. And so there is. So what I try to show is, yes, we have the stuff that makes us different, like the sumo wrestler who's doing hair here. But it kind of emphasizes the fact that this is me and that's the Japanese who do things differently. So it doesn't really make a connection, besides the fact that we can find it beautiful. It can reflect us in a way of differences. And I would like to also enchant in a way of like, that's what we do too. So in a way of like, this is universal. This connects us as human beings. And so that's what I wanted to show. And this is a perfect example. So I'm very happy that you chose this picture. It's like a perfect example of connecting with other cultures by our universal humanity, And so that's what I find important in showing in this book, to like, let's also connect in the way that binds us. And that's maybe something that I would wish also, like, nowadays in how we like so much would like to show how different we think of, how our opinions are so different from each other. Everyone who has, for example, politically a completely opposite opinion what you're thinking probably has a lot of stuff that you can connect with.
Right.
And so I'm actually always going towards that, to what binds us, what connects us, and try to show that, just as a way of like balancing the ugliness out, to be honest.
Right. I think it's so important. And what spoke to me specifically about that photo was sometimes the comparison that we get into as parents, because we think, that this other mom has it all together, or that their kids could never behave the way my kids behave, And I looked at that photo, and literally the first thing I said was, Leah, my youngest is Leah. She jumped off the couch yesterday, and then my other daughter sits on the top of it like a cat, kind of like the other girl in the picture. And it was that moment of we're not so different, and I'm not alone in this crazy parenting world.
I'm right in the middle of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, so the final one that I chose, I love the coloring. It's 226 and 227. I love the coloring, and I think I have heard about this place, but I would love for you to share about it.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's like so that was actually a suggestion that I got through social media, and I'm gonna now actually figure out, because that's kind of like the thing. So this is these are Yizu statues at the Zoyoji Temple. That's in Minato City in Tokyo. So that was kind of like very, very touching. So basically, you have a lot of temples in Tokyo, and this temple of not the site on this temple, there's a temple, and there are like different sites where where people commemorate or like give praise to to something special. And the speciality in here is that this is the site where you commemorate the children that you have lost, the child that you have lost. So these are like the sites that parents go to when they've lost a child, and they do that in this way by these statues. And then all these statues have like these little windmills and flowers, and it's not only the children that you've lost after birth, but also the children that you've lost, so that even the aborted children are also honored here. So basically there's like this whole story of like a lot of children are in between two worlds, and so they need help into like finding their way into the afterlife, and this is one of the sites that kind of helps them with that. So I thought it's a very, and also like I didn't thought it was right to photograph people here who are actually there was one lady who was like mourning somebody, which was very it's very touching. And and so so this is the picture that shows that site. So there's a whole story of like where this is.
Yeah, I love that. And it moved me that there was care taken to make these little either knitted or crochets, little bonnets, and so I talked about recently my grandparents. My grandparents are in a mausoleum over here when they passed away, and there's not a lot of care taken to the ground, and the grounds that they're in, and I just, it was sad to me, and so that was really spoke to me that it's like caring for someone in the afterlife, so to speak.
So it's not necessary. So these are not graves, but these are like places where people honor, a lost one.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I can't think of a better time than any to listen to Dorothy Auger's For Love poem, and we're going to be right back to find out where you can get your copy of Tokyo, Tokyo after this.
I shall stand for love, even with a broken soul, even with a heavy heart. I shall stand for love, for the world is wounded, not just my little piece of land, where I am mostly safe, where I am mostly well, but our world, everywhere, every day. I shall stand for love, because we need more light, not more death, not more power, not more bombs. I shall stand for love, so that our children are safe, so that our friends are sheltered, so that our borders are open. I shall stand for love, even with a broken soul, even with a heavy heart.
Thank you so much for standing for love with us today. We are here with Richard Koek. This has been such an inspiring conversation to me, Richard. I'm so glad that we finally got the opportunity to do this. And thank you for these. I haven't purchased a book like this for myself in a really long time. And it really does serve that people watching need for myself. To be able to think of the stories and just the beauty of every single photo, whether it's a screen that you can't see through or some sort of memorial or kids jumping off a couch. I mean, it really, really just speaks to life, I think.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for buying. I was like,
Yeah.
the first thought that I had was like, I could at least send that lady a book of mine like that. You had to like buy my book. I'm like totally embarrassed that like you bought my books, and then like you gave all these praise to me. So thank you so much. Like I will make it right with something else.
Well, listen. Well, this is what my thinking in my head, because here I am with my stories, is that we're close enough to actually meet up eventually, and you can sign my books for me. That'll be my.
That's the least I can do. Yes,
that would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. What would you say is maybe the biggest, is there something in particular that you've learned from doing both New York and Tokyo? Like, is there a big message or a big a breakthrough that you've had just through these two books?
Yes, especially the second one, actually. Yeah, the Tokyo book. Then we actually go back to like being an artist and being actually, because being an artist is like you always have to, it's not that you have to reinvent yourself all the time, but every time when you do something, it kind of like needs to like emphasize the fact that you still have it.
Right.
Like there's this great TED talk with Elizabeth Gilbert. She wrote Eat, Pray, Love.
Okay.
And she basically talks about creativity, how to deal with creativity, because she wrote, that was her first book, and it became like this, this blockbuster basically. And then she was like, how do you follow up with that, with something that's number one in everything? And so creativity, and she talks about creativity as like something fleeing. She explains how back in the days before the Renaissance, people like considered creativity as something that has been given to you, that has been lent to you by a higher power, and you have the fortune of having that and being able to do the things that but it can always be taken away from you at any moment. And so basically creativity is something that you don't own, but that you only like pass through. And so I really love, so one of the things that I've realized when making the book Tokyo, I was like, can I do this? Can I? And then now that I know that I have to just trust on my talent, whatever that may be, and just trust that everything will be okay. And that you can only do your best. And that's what I did. I didn't pin myself on that I'm going to fail or if I'm going to succeed. I'm going to pin myself on just working really hard and just doing the absolute best that I can do. And then whatever comes out of it will be good, whether it's successful or not. And with that attitude, I was like totally free. I could do whatever I wanted to do without any fear. And that's the most powerful place to be in. And that's what I've learned from my book, Tokyo.
Oh, that made me a little bit emotional. Just a little bit. It's not the breakthrough show unless we cry. Okay, so that's really, I mean, it really is a beautiful revelation, and I'm so thankful that you allowed yourself that freedom to just be and play and show your gift.
I was so happy, feeling so free, and I'm like. And while I'm also happy in now, like the life that I'm like, because now I'm in New York, I'm in the rat race, the grind is like, is on, and like I got to hustle for my, to pay my mortgage again. But still, that moment of realization that I can always choose to be in that state, and like, and now I feel way more. It's nice to have no expectations, to just work. Just work and do whatever you got to do, Just do it. Yeah, that's like it's a nice thing. Yeah, and everything will be good. It's all good.
Yes, I love that. So, do you have any plans for future books, other places,
I get that question often. Like, what's the next city? I've like no idea. I'm now writing out this whole like this promoting and talking about my experiences, which I love doing, and I have no plans. That's the thing.
Mm.
I have some plans, but I still have to like start working on that. Yeah, I have some plans, but it's all going to be about New York City. That's kind of like because that's where I live, and so New York City takes a lot from me, but it also gives me a lot as a photographer. So I'm gonna I'm gonna keep on with the relationship with that lady. Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, if I had seen New York several years ago, I think I would have moved back up north quicker than I did, because it really does feel like home. It really feels like home. And so it's really beautiful what you've done. Again, I can't say that enough. Where can everybody find you? I know we have your link for Tokyo in the comments. We also have all of Richard's links in the show notes as well, but verbally let everybody know where they can find you. And
it's available it's available on the websites that offer books, but I would definitely suggest go to your local bookstore. They need the patronage, and just ask if they have Tokyo, and buy it in the bookstore, and otherwise go to the big evil sales websites and get it there. It's available everywhere right now. Yeah. And my name and Tokyo or New York will lead you to it. Thank you for that opportunity to say that.
Of course. And I also wanted to mention you have a postcard project that you're working on as well. Before we go today, postcards from New York. Do you want to tell everybody about that?
Yeah. So it's actually a COVID project of like telling the world how things are going in New York, and I still keep doing that. And so I can show you actually the latest. So basically, each month I create a postcard that I will sign. It's a print that I make, and together with a letter talking about anything I basically make, and you can subscribe to this. So basically, each month you can receive a postcard from New York, and that's postcardsfromnewyork.com. Yeah, and
there we go.
Thank you. Yeah. And so that's kind of like that forces me to stay creative, because I have to create a postcard each month and write something about it. And those are like, you've heard me talk right now. So that's kind of like how I weave something in together with that picture that, that's of my living and life. Yeah.
Love it. I love it. Make sure you guys go get this book or one of the books and go dive in, because I know most of you that watch this show, and we've become close enough to know that you are a rabbit hole explorer as I am, and you will enjoy these books as much as I did. So make sure you check them out. Richard, thank you so much for being here today. It really has been a pleasure to talk to you, and didn't expect to get so emotional about photographs, but here we are.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you for having me. It was a real pleasure. You're a very good interviewer. It's very pleasant to talk to you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. All right. I want to give you guys just a couple thoughts here as we finish up the show today, and inspire you to come back the next time as well. As we wrap up today's episode, I'm so inspired by Richard's journey and his ability to capture compelling narratives through photography, even if, as we found out, he may not even be thinking of the story as he goes along. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And your beautiful work with us. Your passion for visual storytelling is truly remarkable. For those of you who want to explore more of Richard's work, be sure to check out richardkoek.com. Also, you can find him on social media. We've got all of his links down below. And don't forget to catch our next episode of The Breakthrough Show, where we will continue to bring you inspiring stories and transformative conversations. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas. Thank you so much, Richard, again, for being here today. Thanks to all of you. And I want to remind you to make every day a great day for a breakthrough. And we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.